During his inaugural address last month, President Trump declared that he would be renaming Denali, the tallest peak in Alaska, back to Mount McKinley, and that the Gulf of Mexico would be renamed the Gulf of America.
We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America, what a beautiful name. And it's appropriate. It's appropriate.
The proposed name was met with ridicule by Mexican leaders, but it raises an interesting question. What's in a name? Quite a lot, actually, especially in global politics. The names of countries, cities, and landmarks aren't just labels. They reflect histories of colonization, sovereignty, and identity. And changing a name? That can be an act of resistance, a political statement, or even spark a diplomatic controversy. From Bombay to Mumbai, Swaziland to Eswatini, and the Persian Gulf versus the Arabian Gulf, and now the Gulf of Mexico and the Gulf of America, place names are at the center of major international debates. So today I want to explore the power of naming and renaming in global politics, and explore how it connects to concepts like sovereignty, nationalism, and soft power. Hey everyone, I'm Noah Zerbe. I'm a professor of global politics at California State Polytechnic University Humboldt. Welcome to Global Insights, where we explore contemporary debates in global politics through the lens of international relations, political science, and political economy. Let's start with the foundational question. Who gets to decide what a place is called? At its core, naming is an assertion of sovereignty, the right of a government or people to define their own political and territorial identity. When a country changes its name, it's often making a statement about its own independence and self-determination. Take Eswatini, for example. In 2018, King Mswati III announced that Swaziland would revert to its indigenous name, Eswatini. The rationale? The country had gained independence from Britain in 1968, yet its colonial-era name remained. In this context, renaming was a way to assert national identity and break from its colonial past. And Eswatini's hardly alone. Many countries have chosen new names as part of the process of decolonization. Bechuanaland became Botswana, the Gold Coast became Ghana, Nyasaland became Malawi, Rhodesia became Zimbabwe, Southwest Africa, Namibia, Upper Volta became Burkina Faso, the Gilbert Islands became Kiribati, the New Hebrides became Vanuatu, the Caroline Islands became Micronesia. We could go on and on and on. Frantz Fanon's work on the psychological impact of colonialism helps us understand why. Fanon argued that colonialism wasn't just about physical domination, but it was also a psychological assault that aimed to dehumanize the colonized. It instilled feelings of inferiority, self-hatred, and a loss of cultural identity. Seen from this perspective, renaming a country at independence became a symbolic act of reclaiming that lost identity. It signified a rejection of the colonial past and an assertion of a nation's right to define its own terms. It's a way to break free from the psychological change of colonialism and embrace a new self-determined identity. Renaming allowed newly independent nations to challenge these colonial narratives, rewriting their history to reflect their own perspectives, honoring their heroes, acknowledging their struggles, and reclaiming their rightful place in the world. And renaming can be a powerful tool for nation building. Remember that colonialism often fragmented the identities of colonized people, dividing them along linguistic, ethnic, or religious lines to maintain control, a process often referred to as divide and rule. In this context, renaming can help forge a new national identity that transcends these divisions, uniting people under a common name and a common vision for the future. Ironically, though, this can often lead to tensions with neighbors. For example, when Macedonia gained independence from Yugoslavia in 1991, it called itself the Republic of Macedonia. But Greece objected, arguing that that name implied a claim on the Greek region of Macedonia. For nearly 3 decades, the country was officially recognized as the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia in international institutions. It wasn't until 2019, after intense negotiations and nationalist protests on both sides, that it officially became North Macedonia, ending the diplomatic standoff and paving the way for its membership in NATO. And even within countries, naming can be a flashpoint. In the United States, contemporary debates over renaming landmarks, schools, and streets, especially those named after Confederate leaders or colonial figures, highlights how naming can reflect shifting national values and identities. It's also important to remember that names are not just labels, they're also symbols of power. From the perspective of the colonized, colonial names represent the power of the colonizer, and indigenous names were often suppressed or marginalized. By choosing their own names, newly independent states are asserting their sovereignty and their right to self-determination. It's a way of saying, we're no longer your colony, we're our own nation with our own identity and our own destiny. Naming isn't just about overcoming colonization or reasserting identity. It can also be a question of soft power and international influence. Take the debate over naming the body of water that separates Iran from the Arabian Peninsula, whether it should be called the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Gulf. Iran insists on calling this body the Persian Gulf, pointing to historical maps and documents containing that name. Meanwhile, the Arab states in the region, most notably Saudi Arabia, refer to the body of water as the Arabian Gulf. The dispute over this name has become increasingly politicized and can be seen, at least in part, as a microcosm over the broader geopolitical rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. But it presents technical challenges, particularly for mapmakers and online platforms like Google Maps, who need to balance historical accuracy, political sensitivity, and clear communication. In this specific case, Google has tried to take a neutral approach, often using both names to reflect the body of water or referring to it simply as the Gulf. The Gulf of Mexico versus Gulf of America case presents a similar challenge for Google. President Trump ordered the U.S. government to change the name of the Gulf in all official U.S. government documents to the Gulf of America. Meanwhile, Mexico has asserted that it will continue to recognize the body of water as the Gulf of Mexico. For its part, Google's instituted an interesting technical approach under which its maps will refer to the body of water by different names depending upon the location of the user. People accessing Google Maps from the United States will see it referred to as the Gulf of America. Users in Mexico will see it referred to as the Gulf of Mexico, and users in all other countries will see both names referenced. Another example? Look at the use of Ukraine versus the Ukraine. Many English speakers once referred to the country as the Ukraine, but since independence, Ukrainians have pushed to drop the article the. Why? Because saying the Ukraine implies it's a region, not a sovereign state. The shift is a small but meaningful assertion of national identity, especially in the wake of Russia's 2014 annexation of Crimea and the ongoing war. And then there's the case of Taiwan, which the United States views as an independent sovereign state, but China views as a breakaway province. The government of China exerts considerable pressure on non-state actors to drop the reference to Taiwan as a country. Since 1981, the International Olympic Committee has limited athletes from Taiwan to compete under the label of Chinese Taipei rather than Taiwan. Similarly, in 2018, the Chinese government mandated that U.S.-flagged airlines like Delta, United, or American refer to Taiwanese destinations only by the city name. Airlines that refuse to comply with the directive would not be granted access to Chinese airspace. These naming disputes often play out in international organizations like the International Olympic Committee, but bodies like the International Hydrographic Organization and the UN Group of Experts on Geographic Names also play a role. These groups are responsible for standardizing place names internationally. As a result, they often face political pressure when deciding how to list disputed territories. Should Crimea be labeled as part of Russia or Ukraine? Should Jerusalem be recognized as Israel's capital? These aren't just technical decisions, they have political consequences. And let's not forget how digital platforms like Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Wikipedia play into the debates as well. By choosing which name to display, or whether to just display multiple names, they aren't just reflecting the reality of the world, they're helping to shape it. And as a result, they often get caught in the proverbial crossfire. For example, Wikipedia has become an unexpected battleground for geographic naming disputes. Because Wikipedia allows anyone to edit its pages, conflicts over politically sensitive names often escalate to edit wars, repeated back-and-forth changes where editors alter a page's content to reflect their preferred terminology. One of the most highly contested Wikipedia pages is Crimea, the Ukrainian territory that Russia annexed in 2014. Pro-Russian editors have repeatedly changed Wikipedia's description of Crimea from a region of Ukraine to a region of Russia, while pro-Ukrainian editors change it back. Wikipedia's solution? Locking the page to prevent further disputes and citing the UN's official stance, which is that Crimea is a part of Ukraine. A similar situation played out in the Persian or Arabian Gulf, with Iranian editors insisting on the Persian Gulf and Arab editors changing it to the Arabian Gulf. The English Wikipedia page generally defaults to the Persian Gulf, but includes a note acknowledging the dispute. But on Arabic language Wikipedia, it's referred to as the Arabian Gulf, showing how different linguistic versions of Wikipedia often take different positions. And other edits have been equally contested. Kiev versus Kyiv, the status of Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights, the previously mentioned Taiwan versus Chinese Taipei. Because Wikipedia aims to present a neutral point of view, it often bases naming conventions on official sources like the United Nations, national governments, or major media outlets. However, because different linguistic versions of Wikipedia operate independently, pages in different languages often reflect local preferences and traditions. To resolve edit wars, Wikipedia sometimes locks controversial pages to prevent continuous back-and-forth changes. It also has guidelines on disputed names, encouraging editors to include both names where possible or to follow dominant usage and reliable sources. But these naming disputes on Wikipedia illustrate how battles over place names aren't just fought in diplomatic meetings or international organizations. They also happen in digital spaces. The way a place is named online can shape public perception and, in turn, influence real-world politics. Maps are more than just geography, they're political documents. Every name tells a story, but some stories get erased, rewritten, or are contested. So next time you look at a map, ask yourself, who had the power to name this place, and what does that tell us about history and politics? That's it for today's episode of Global Insights. Let me know in the comments section below, what place name do you think should be changed or restored? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you found this video interesting, and I'll see you next time.